Hello, and I've just recently had a question about magic thread, so I thought rather than try and explain it via email, I would show you. So basically, a magic thread is going to take the place of your crochet hook or your Lazy Susan at the end of a piece of lace. You only need them if you are going to be joining up your lace. So this is one of my angel wings, and you work all the way around and come back to the start and join the pairs together here. So this is the ideal place where you need or can use a magic thread. You don't need one on a bookmark because you start at the top and finish at the bottom and there's no joining. So it's purely where the lace joins together from start to the finish joins the start. So you put your magic thread in generally at the start. You can add it later with a needle, but it's much easier to do it at the start. So let's look at when you have a single pair on a pin. But first, what is a magic thread? Well, this is my magic thread, and it doesn't look like much. All it is a length of thread that I have folded in half. So I've got a loop this end and two ends this end. So that might already look familiar to you because normally that's what your Lazy Susan will look like. This is just a scrap piece of thread left over from one of my other laces, and I've just licked my fingers and ran my fingers down the length of the thread, and it takes out any of the kinks from the bobbin, so it's worth hanging on to long pieces. Now the reason I have mine long is because you're going to be laying these threads across your pillow, and if you're not very alert, as sometimes I can't be, or a Monday morning feeling, and you think, what's that piece of thread doing on my pillow, and you start pulling it, because you've got a long piece, hopefully before you pull it out you'll realize and remember that it's your magic thread. So it's a safety precaution as far as I'm concerned. Keep it long, keep it in. So here's my pair on my pin, and I'm going to put the end with the loop in the middle of that pair. So I'm just literally going to put it underneath one of the bobbins, and then I join the two threads together with one hand and lay it to the back, and that is my magic thread installed in one pair. Now if you have two pairs that are side by side on the same pin, you'll do the first one, put the magic thread in, then you'll put the second pair on the same pin, and then put your second magic thread in. So here's my loop, here's my two ends. I always just generally go underneath the right hand bobbin. So loop is in the middle, so under my right hand bobbin, there's my loop, there's my ends. I put them together and slide them up the thread and lay them at the back. You'll notice I have two different coloured threads. Now I would suggest you have far more than two. I'm only showing you how to put it on with two bobbins at the moment, but if I was doing this I would have different coloured threads for at least 5 of the bobbins. If you haven't got enough thread to cover all of the bobbins, then what you can do is you can repeat it. So say I had yellow, blue, green, pink, I could then go yellow, blue, green, pink on the next set of 4, and then yellow, blue, pink, green on the next set of 4, if that makes sense. The reason you do this is because when you come to the end and you are met with this host of threads, which, let's face it, you're going to have pins, you're going to have bobbins, you're going to have threads, you need to get to those starter pinholes. By colour coordinating each pinhole and knowing, because that's the other thing, write the sequence down. By knowing which threads are in which order, you will be able to pinpoint the pinhole that you need. So if I came round here and I thought, right, this is the pair that's got to go into the yellow pinhole, here's my yellow thread. this is the pair that needs to go into my blue, here is the thread, and so on. So I would suggest at least having, I would say at least 5 different colours, because there'll be that enough of a gap between 1 and 5 before you start again with 1 and on to 5, if that makes sense. So that is how you put them in singularly. Now if you had 2 bobbins on 1 pin, so let me just, so here's our first bobbin. Now quite often you have to start with an open start, so here's my first pair, putting my second pair around, so I now have 1 pair made up of 1 of each of the bobbins from the other pair. So exactly the same, here's my magic thread, loop in my left hand is going to go under the right hand pair of bobbins. So this time I'm taking it under the 2 bobbins, because what you want is this loop here in the middle of this pair, 2 pairs. You want it in the middle so that when you sew in, you actually come through the center of the hole, not off to one side. So I've placed it under the 2 right hand bobbins, put your 2 threads together and lay them to the back, and there's your 2 pairs on a single pin, set open, and your magic thread in. So then you're probably wondering what happens when you get to the end. Well, it's very simple. At the end, you carefully pull out your threads, and here's your loop, and what you're going to do is lengthen off 1 bobbin of your pair, or 2 bobbins if you're sewing 2 pairs into the same pinhole, and you're going to put the number of bobbins that you're sewing in to make the first loop through this loop. And then what you're going to do is you are going to pull the ends. So this magic thread is taking the position of your Lazy Susan and your crochet hook, but you're not actually having to do any work, hence the reason it's a magic thread, because you did the work at the start. So you would pull it, and if I put my other thread through this loop, you'll be able to see. There's my thread, so that's my pair, pull it through, and there's my loop that I then put my other bobbin through to make my sewing. So I'm hoping that will explain a magic thread to you. You can put them in as many pairs as you want. Just be aware that to repeat the number of colours, because it will make your life easier at the end. And hopefully that will give you an idea of how to use magic threads, and I really love them, and every time I use them I go, oh, that's magic. Sound a bit like a magician now. Anyway, enjoy.